We have a short and sweet session, mainly focusing on solutions. In this session, we have with us Mushahid Hussain Syed Saab. No need to introduce him, he's our intellectual politician. We have with us Ms. Teresa Chang, who is a political officer of the US Embassy, who covers domestic political issues, human rights, and labor. Abdul Hamid Kausar, who is DIG of Sindh Police, a senior police officer. And finally, Syed Kausar Abbas, who is Executive Director of SSDO, host of this event, and a very senior development professional, as well as social and human rights activist. So as I said, in this session, we want to focus mainly on solutions. We have like half an hour and 4 questions. And I'll request panelists to answer each question in 2 minutes so that we could complete this program. Kisko? Inka kya? Okay. And I would also like to invite Ms. Shehla Raza Sahiba, a senior politician. Can you please come and join us on stage? I'm told that Kausar Saab is not available. He won't be able to join us. So we have already discussed that trafficking in humans is a heinous crime which plagues societies all over the world. Pakistan is a source, transit, and destination. There's an alarming situation. It is a crime that leads to exploitation and enslavement, particularly of vulnerable sections, including women and children. And it is a huge challenge. So the first question is a very broad one. So what steps can be taken to improve this situation, looking very broadly? So can I start with you, Ms. Chang? From an outsider's eye, you have a different kind of advantage. See, when you look at Pakistan, how do you look at the situation of trafficking? And what do you think, if you give us just some bullet points, what Pakistan needs to do?
Great, thank you, sir. So I think when it comes to, you say the outsider perspective, I think one thing I want to remind everybody again, and this is something that the ambassador also mentioned yesterday, is trafficking and human trafficking, the issues that we are talking about today in this 2-day conference, is not just a problem in Pakistan alone. This is a global issue. This is a problem that happens around the world. We also have this problem in the United States. And so do not feel that this is a problem you have to deal with alone. And I think that's something that we have to remind ourselves a lot. And I know throughout the 2-day conference, we've been hearing a lot about the 3 Ps, about prosecution, about protection, about prevention. There is a 4th P when it comes to a holistic approach to trafficking that we have to also remember, and that's partnership. And I really congratulate every single one of you because you have really taken the first step in approaching this problem by being here, by being a participant in this conference, by being willing to come here and be a stakeholder on the issue here. You have joined in on this 4th P of partnership. And I think when we go into a lot of the more of the nitty-gritty details of recommendations, whether it's the recommendations that the State Department puts out in our annual Trafficking in Persons report. The 2022 one came out last year around July. You can find it online. We give pretty specific, actionable recommendations in regards to what we think are priority areas that can be worked on. I don't want to go into a lot of detail because, again, this is readily available online. I'm sure probably most of you have already read this in some form. You know, and it follows along the 4 Ps. We're talking about prosecution, not allowing fines in lieu of imprisonment. We're talking about increasing the number of convictions, and not just looking at identifying cases, but also bring them all the way across into investigations, and to bring them to court, into getting them convicted, and making sure that perpetrators actually pay for what they do in these circumstances. And when we look at protection of victims, we're also looking at making sure that resources are available for the victims. We're expanding resources, and in Pakistan, we know, you know, especially for bonded laborers, this includes shelter, this includes resources for identifying their documents, legal assistance, and making sure it's not just about identifying one person or identifying one brick kiln or one situation, but making sure that it's a holistic approach. There is a partnership between civil society. There's a partnership between the provinces and the federal government. There's a partnership when it comes to connecting people with resources, with the law enforcement, and with people like you who are genuinely interested in solving this problem. And so I think that would be my recommendation, is that when we look at the Ps, for Pakistan, when we look at prosecution, protection, prevention, and partnership, that last point is something we really have to focus on, because we have to make sure that the actions that are here, and I was talking to Senator Kamran, and I was talking to MPA Kamran earlier, is we can't just let it end here. And I think those are really good points that we have to remember, is it's about continuing this partnership you have started in these 2-day conference, and making sure that we actually move it into something actionable for Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I move forward, may I invite Mr. Iqbal Ditho, who will replace Mr. Khoso. Mr. Ditho sir, can you join us here? Mushahid Hussain sir, turning to you, and mainly focusing on national policies, because you have been involved in policy making and governance at the national level.
Yes.
So, from your experience and your wisdom, what government of Pakistan needs to do to tackle this problem? I mean, again, taking a big picture and summarizing the situation in just 2 minutes.
Thank you, Zaigham Khan Saab, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be at this very important conference on an issue which has global, regional, and national dimensions. And I think the 2 aspects are very important, what Teresa pointed out, partnership, because we are talking of a nexus of criminality which includes criminal gangs, very well organized in Pakistan, operating in connivance with border corrupt officials, either at the land border or the air border or the sea border, and smugglers in Europe. So that is one dimension. And secondly, I think that it's important to have a certain kind of political will. Because if we see the statistics there, in Pakistan, on an average, over 100 people are trafficked every day, internal and external. And last week's tragic incident in Italy brings forth this human tragedy. 28 Pakistanis were sunk in a boat, and this happened last time also on the Libyan coast. 16 of them, and then earlier in Macedonia, 7 were shot at the border. So this kind of tragedy continues. And I was looking at the UN statistics that the UN Migrant Persons Project says 17,000 people died or disappeared in the last 10 years in the Mediterranean area. So I would say the issue is not of laws, but law enforcement. And in certain areas, because most of them come from the Punjab and central Punjab, we know Gujarat, Mandi Bhaudin, Lala Musa, where the gangs operate, I think there has to be a crackdown, because some of them also have political patronage. And that has to be important. And I would say that this kind of awareness sessions like a task force or other things should be mentioned, because last year, Zaigham Khan Saab, 800,000 Pakistanis traveled abroad. And I was talking to the passport officials, every day they are issuing these days on an average 50,000 passports every day. So the travel is huge. And trafficking is there, it's a lucrative industry. And one last point, now it's also an issue of narco-terrorism. ISIS in Afghanistan, they are hiring child soldiers, giving them $300 per month as a payment for this kind of thing. So the issue is developing a very dangerous dimension, and I think it is becoming even a security threat. So Parliament, practitioners, policymakers, and opinion leaders have to forge hands, and there should be a global partnership, and I'm glad the US government and the US embassy have been seized of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mushahid Sahab. You added a new dimension that we did not have in our minds. It is also turning into a very serious security issue as well, transnational security issue as well. Shehla Raza Sahiba. So looking at at this situation from Sindh's perspective and provincial perspective, and provinces are all powerful after the 18th Amendment. So what needs to be done? Again, in 2 minutes, please.
As Minister Women Development Department, our department duties are very sensitive. But I won't ask one question. How can only government implement all the laws unless each segment of the society is not take interest on implementation? We can provide protection, we can provide legal assistance, we can provide health assistance to a tortured lady, and social welfare provide same type of protection to under 18, and sometime we jointly doing this in case of girl. Sometime the court send in a state of child protection unit to the Darul Aman or safe houses. But what can we do if the family is not ready to launch an FIR and came when the case bilkul tabah ho jaye? Or what can we do if the police in a state of launch the FIR, starting the question, pehle malum karo bachchi ka kisi se koi chakkar to nahi tha? What can we do agar police apna kaam sahi tariqe se start hi na kare? So we can provide all the things. Most of the time I insist with my DIG Sindh ke jab any time when a woman or a girl come to your police station, it's very difficult for a woman to come the police station. But if she come, why you not concerned with our concerned district officer or the other? Please call her. But it's not happening. Yesterday, I emphasized to create linkages among the different line department. Then we can successful to provide the better protection, better support. And now, in case of transgender, the Sindh is successful to provide the leadership at UC level. And the one transgender seat is now in the local government newly election. And they can raise their voice, and the credit also with the Pakistan People's Party, who initiated the identity card of the transgender. And now they have quota in the jobs, I think 0.05%, and already a transgender female is in commission on the status of the women and Sindh. And now.
Thank you, Shehla Raza Sahiba. Okay. We'll come back to this point of cooperation between the civil society and the government and creating these linkages. Iqbal Ditho Sahab, your view on this. Please turn the mic on.
What subject you want?
What needs to be done?
Thank you. Look, we are a part and parcel of the international community. When international watchdogs issues the reports, either it's the Amnesty International annual report or Human Rights Watch report or US State Department's reports, or Pakistan is a part of the UN human rights system. Pakistan has ratified 7 core conventions out of 9 core conventions in the UN human rights system. And one key convention, that is the Convention on the Rights of Child, which Pakistan has ratified in 1990. And since 90 up till 2023, and we have also ratified 2 optional protocols. One protocol on the involvement of children into armed conflict as a child soldiers, which Mushahid Hussain Sahab mentioned, and other optional protocol which we had ratified, that is the optional protocol on the sale of children for the commercial and sexual exploitation. So when Pakistan is being reviewed, and you had seen that last month Pakistan was reviewed in the Universal Periodic Review at the Human Rights Council. That is the peer process where the governments scrutinize the record on the basis of the international human rights law, on the basis of the international humanitarian law, and on the basis of the human rights conventions. So when we talk about human trafficking, it has connection with international human rights law, it has connection with the international humanitarian law, it has connection with international criminal law, and even ILO conventions. ILO Convention on Bonded Labor, that is 29, its forced abolition of ILO Convention 105. So Pakistan has ratified 8 ILO core conventions as well. So what I'm trying to see that when all the government departments, whether it is the Ministry of Interior, whether it is the Ministry of Human Resource, overseas, or whether it is the provincial governments, we are supposed to fulfill our international obligations in good faith. And UN Charter says in Article 2 that every UN member is obligated to fulfill its obligation. And even Vienna Law and Convention of the Treaty of 1969 says in Pacta sunt servanda that we cannot have the excuse that we have a devolution system, we have 18th Amendment, we have the other internal laws which are not conforming to our international obligations. So my suggestion is that earlier, the parliamentarians were saying that there should be a post-legislative scrutiny. There should be the subcommittees on the delegated legislations like in the Senate. In Senate, there is a subcommittee on the delegated legislation. In National Assembly's rules of procedures, these mechanisms should be brought into the provincial assemblies standing committees where they should not only legislate the law, but they should have the oversight and the implementation, and they call the departments what laws that particular administrative department has, what is the status of implementation. So it is both representation, oversight, and international cooperation and compliance.
Thank you, Ditho Sahab. So, Kausar Abbas Sahab, Ditho Sahab spoke about Pakistan's international obligations, but state has obligations to its citizens as well, because at the end of the day, it's lives of the citizens that are at stake, their well-being at stake, and they are being exploited, particularly the most vulnerable sections of the society. So you being an active member of the civil society, how do you look at this situation from citizens' perspective, and what, in your opinion, needs to be done?
Thank you, Zaigham Sahab, and thank you for pointing out the issue that it's basically an human exploitation. So I think what I believe is it deals with the 2 important things. One is it's an exploitation of a human being and a violation of the human rights, and the other thing is that it's a national cause as well. Because we have to submit a global report every year. So every year when we submit the report, it's a national cause because ultimately we have to get the ranking, and that would be presented to by the State Department, and if we'll be in the tier 2 watch list or in the tier 3 list, then we'll be having some financial implications. The other thing is, yes, this is the responsibility of state, because 2018 law, if we talk about Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act 2018, it clearly defines the role of police to deal with such issues, the trafficking within the border of Pakistan. As I mentioned in my opening speech yesterday as well, because police has to do so many other things, so trafficking in persons, human rights, child protection, and all these things, they are not the kind of priority of the department, because they have to do so many other things as well. So what I think is, we have recently been to US for the IVLP, and that was a wonderful experience. We have learned a lot of things, practical things from IVLP exposure, and we met the police officials there. They have the dedicated units, investigative units, who deals with the issues of trafficking in person, who deals with the issue of gender-based violence and such kind of issues. So there is a need to develop a kind of dedicated investigative units at every district level across the province, and that dedicated unit should have the responsibility of investigating the cases related to the trafficking in persons, because if the dedicated person will be assigned this responsibility to do that, he will be able to present all the evidences to the prosecution, and prosecution has to play their role ultimately towards the conviction, and there is a need to improve the conviction rate. Again, if police will be equipped with all this knowledge, and they'll be able to present the right cases and the information which is which has all the evidences, then they'll be able to convict as well. The other thing is the training of police. That is very important. Like the Punjab Judicial Academy, they have already included Trafficking in Persons Act 2018 in their syllabus. We are also in touch with the Sindh Judicial Academy to replicate the same model, but there is a need to replicate this model or incorporate the trafficking in persons issues in the syllabus of the provincial police at all levels as well, because whether it's a ASI, whether it's a PSP officer, whether it's of any rank, ultimately they have to deal with such cases, and then they'll be going through all these things, then they'll be able to deal such cases in a better way. National hotline, very important thing. Again, we saw this very successful model in DC, which is again run by a local NGO in the United States, Polaris NGO, who is basically providing the services to the state. Civil society has a very important role to work in collaboration with the state, but unfortunately, Pakistani civil society has so many hurdles to work on a number of policies and interventions. So there is a need to create spaces for the civil society to make them partner. It's ultimately it's a responsibility of state to provide such kind of services to the citizen. But we, the civil society, we are here to assist the state institutions, or to provide assistance to the state institutions in implementation and rehabilitation and victim identification, and providing them the psychosocial support and different other activities. So national hotline is very important. People were talking about the data, police officers were talking about the data, especially the data related to the internal trafficking. Pakistan doesn't have the proper data on these issues. As I mentioned yesterday as well, that whenever we need any kind of information from the district police or district department or the provincial department, there is a need to write them a letter. That letter have to travel in the next 4 days to the next office. Then there is a क्या कहते हैं उसे डाक के खाते में पड़ा रहता है और वो डाक का जवाब कभी नहीं आता. So there is a need to make a national hotline to digitize such kind of issues, and there should be a kind of service to the concerned victims on a single click basis, and the real-time reporting will be ensured when we'll be having a national hotline. One number should be given to the citizens that in case of any such kind of issue, a citizen can call on any one number that would be applicable across Pakistan, and every district department and the police department and the rehabilitation department, they should be connected with that national hotline, and there should be a dashboard. We have already given this proposal to the FIA as well, that how this hotline will be working. And yes, we can start it on the pilot phase on the volunteer basis as well, if the government agrees about that. We have also, there is a need to again develop the capacity of the civil society organizations at a local level. We have recently launched the CTIP network, Coalition on Trafficking in Persons in Coalition on Combating Trafficking in Persons in Pakistan, and we have the members, civil society members across Pakistan who are part of this network. And the purpose of this network is to strengthen the capacity of the local organizations to mainstream their role in providing the services, in providing assistance to the government institutions and the victims at the local level. Another important thing is conviction is very important. The law clearly says in case of women and children, there should be a 1 million fine and 10 years imprisonment, and in case of male or any other, it should be at least 7 years of imprisonment. But unfortunately, till now, we do not have any such kind of case study that we can quote that this is the person who is convicted through the trafficking cases. The normal punishments are given to the traffickers, like I've also seen the example of 5,000 fine to a trafficker, 50,000 fine to a trafficker. So there is a need to ensure the implementation of these laws, starting from the police to the conviction level. So ultimately we'll be able to get the better results in that.
Thank you, Kausar Saab. Now I have two quick questions. One for Mushahid Hussain Saab and Ms. Teresa Chang Sahiba, and another for Shehla Raza Sahiba and Iqbal Ditho Saab. So the first question is about the international cooperation. As you said, Mushahid Saab, it is a global problem and increasingly becoming so, and a serious one. And definitely it requires international cooperation. In our case, between Pakistan, regional countries, world, international organizations. So what are your suggestions in this regard? What needs to be done to improve and enhance international cooperation?
I would suggest that we develop a core group of countries in the region who are themselves part of the problem, because they will be eventually part of the solution. Because this region, South Asia, Central Asia, and has been war-torn, has been affected by economic crises, and has been affected by a lot of migration, people coming back and forth, and we ourselves know what has been happening in Afghanistan. And the major drug routes are also in this region, whether through Pakistan, Afghanistan, the crescent is here, and then it goes through Russia, goes through Turkey. So I think that and with the support of the international community, I would request that the US government, the European Union, they should be taken on board. So a broad coalition of countries, about 10 or 15, who are affected by that, they should form coordinated regional strategies for this purpose. And secondly, I think it's a very important what Kausar said just now, that there has hardly been any conviction of people who are caught. We know the gangs, we know where they're located. I travel a lot, for example, and I go on Turkish Airlines. When I'm coming back from Istanbul, at the end I notice there's a group of 10, 15 Pakistani young men. And I ask them, and they are the ones who are being deported. because they were illegal. And they have horrifying tales to tell, how they paid so many lakh of rupees, they paid it to so-and-so gangs in Lahore or other parts, and then they are being, they get caught. Some of them, they're lucky they're alive. Some of them, unfortunately, disappear and die. So I would say that would be there. Secondly, also, for awareness purposes, there was a good suggestion made that a lot of people go for passports. PEMRA, Pakistan Electronic Media Regulatory Authority, is duty bound under the law to have every day 5 to 10 minutes segments on public service advertisements. I think SSDO, Kausar Sahab, you can create those special ads, public service ads, which should be given to PEMRA, warning people, young boys, young girls, or single women or others, and even men also, about the dangers of human trafficking by organized smuggling groups. So these are gangs, and actually, Zaigham Sahab, now it's become a lucrative industry, I'm sorry to say, because the number of people going abroad and the number of people they take money from, and it's international also, and they get paid in dollars, by the way, which is rather missing these days. So I think that this has to be treated, as a national, regional, and a global problem, and it has to be a strategy. I would recommend you have a coalition there. Don't wait for the government. Government is too busy fighting these days. So I think let's get cracking. The Nike slogan is just do it. So I think you form a coalition, and we in the parliament, we can assure you, Shehla has a lot of fire in her belly, and she's always been leading from the front. Wear your joggers, Shehla, get cracking, and we in the parliament in Pakistan will do the needful also. We did it on civic education. We did it on Zaigham case. We did it also on the transgender case. The transgender bill was passed after I raised the issue of the transgender who was killed in Peshawar. And then we had a committee on marginalized communities, and then we took it forward. So I think it's doable, and we should take the initiative, seize the moment, and take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mushahid Sahab, and thank you for your excellent work as a legislator. Same question to you, Ms. Teresa Chang.
No, I really want to thank Senator for having so much fire and really getting everybody invigorated on all these great ideas. I think it's really great, and thank you for hitting on so many wonderful points when it comes to international cooperation, kind of global response. And first of all, I also want to congratulate Pakistan, because you guys became partner to the UN TIP protocol last year, November 4th, 2022. So that is in itself an excellent step. And really, yes, give yourselves a round of applause. Because that was a very specific recommendation that had been made for year after year in the TIP report. And the reason why we're so happy to see that Pakistan has, decided to be partner to the protocol is because a global challenge like human trafficking really can only be addressed with a coordinated global response. And I'm just really happy to see that Pakistan has decided to be a part of that global solution and not just a part of the global problem. And so I think, there was a lot of great suggestions from the Senator, and I think following on that, I think what we also need to see is how do we turn that global response, and how do we turn all those resources also to aspects of the problem within local efforts, right? Like, what are we seeing within the borders of Pakistan? What are we seeing that regionally, I think the idea of having the multi-country organization is a great one. And I think there's a lot of excellent best practices and solutions that other countries have already tried, have already made, mistakes that other countries have made that we can all learn from. And that's something that the United States also does, right? We regularly look through and see what are best practices others have done. For example, when we talk about SDO brought up the hotlines. That's something that we've seen that other organizations have done in other countries, whether it's, I think Norway has a hotline that's funded through the government. We see Greece has one that's funded through private partnership with the government support. These are all examples of solutions that have been tried, have been successful, and I think that Pakistan can go, we don't have to recreate everything. We can look at what's been done regionally, internationally, and be able to take from the elements that work and establish them here. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shehla Raza Sahiba, you earlier spoke about a lukewarm response or lack of response from citizens. So one answer, and perhaps the most important answer to that, is to have a national hotline and to link that hotline with a referral network So hotline and linking it to the referral network so that we could encourage victims to report their cases, then those cases could be documented, but it also requires partnership with civil society, with international stakeholders, and with service providers. So this is something that is considered a recipe all over the world. So what can be done, you see, in Sindh province and at the national level in this regard?
Okay, thank you. Yesterday, in the end, I mentioned in my speech that we need the coordination, international coordination with the national coordination. Now, Human Rights Department, Social Welfare Department, and Women Development Department, they have their own helpline. 1094, the Women Development Department helpline, it's digitized. But a single hotline, a single helpline is required, and we can at each level identify the nature of the case and then transfer or shift on that helpline. This is the right way. Sometimes we received the cases and then we called to the Human Rights Department. This is the case of the Human Rights Department, like the case of the transgender with human rights. So we can start the helpline from the Sindh, and after here I can start the campaign to send the message different offices, and we can start a system and can call a meeting, and I will call the meeting of the different departments and start the discussion on that, and inshallah the Sindh will take initiative first, and it's my promise. And if they are not willing to call us at the same table, who is the responsible first? So we will start from the Women Development Department. And once I want to request, as I again and again calling the cooperation at national level, and please, if the case of a girl, please don't be judgmental. Instead of doing the support of that family, please don't raise this type of stupid question. The girl left home on his own will, on the basis of romance, and the other, but she left. Why she left? This is the question, and the person and the people behind that this are not the right people. Please help the family, support the family in a state of raising, no, not going because of this and that. No, it's your responsibility. Support the family. This is the coordination and this is the cooperation. You rise with that family. Don't be judgmental. This is the cooperation, and we need this type of cooperation with the society. Then raise the question with us. If you come late with us, I can't support like in right way. ये मैं बार बार आपसे दोबारा दरख्वास्त करती हूँ, जब किसी घर में कोई लड़की, कोई बच्चा गायब हो जाए, आप नहीं रीज़न तलाश करेंगे प्लीज़ कि लड़की ने अपनी मर्जी से आशिकी माशूकी में छोड़ा, उसने आशिकी माशूकी में मज़हब तब्दील किया. नहीं, आपको अपने मज़हब की इज्जत रखनी है कि मेरा मज़हब ऐसा नहीं है कि कोई आशिकी माशूकी में तब्दील कर ले. मज़हब की भी एक इज्जत होती है, उसको पढ़ के तब्दील किया जाता है, उसको पढ़ के छोड़ा जाता है. आप कैसे डिफेंड करने खड़े हो जाते हैं? तो प्लीज़ मेरी आप लोगों से ये दरख्वास्त है कि सोसाइटी की कॉपरेशन ये है कि विक्टिम फैमिली की सपोर्ट की जाए, खुद जज बन के नहीं बैठे, और बाजियाब करें जो इन हवालों से लड़कियों को बहला फुसला के घर छोड़ने पे मजबूर कर देते हैं। ये पेरेंट्स का राइट है कि अगर 18 इयर्स से अबव भी लड़की है और वो किसी वजह से घर छोड़ गई है तो वो उसको अदालत में जाके प्रोड्यूस करवाएं। आपको ये राइट नहीं है कि कहें इनकी तरबियत सही नहीं थी, इनका ताल्लुक किसी इस सेक्ट से, ये खुद ऐसे।
थैंक यू शैला
बहुत
रज़ा
शुक्रिया।
साहिबा। And lastly, Iqbal, Ditho sab, same question to you from the perspective of law enforcement agencies, national hotline and referral network.
I think before I dilate upon that thing, my view is that when we talk about human rights, it entails three duties: right to respect, right to protect, right to fulfill. And this trilogy of human rights entails the cooperation not only the national level but at the international level as well. If the national governments are unwilling or unable to fulfill their responsibilities, we have the legal framework, that is the 0.7% of the GDP was supposed to be provided by the developed countries to the developing countries for the international cooperation in order to meet their socio-economic needs. But we had seen that foreign policy drives all these agendas, and every country has their foreign policy, and and no doubt Ukraine war has also strained on the resources at the international level. And let me tell you, the civil society space has shrunk a lot in Pakistan. And the only cooperation is from G to G, government to government, or government to UN agencies. The paradigm shift in the development aid in Pakistan from 90s and 2000 has limited the space of the political and human rights in Pakistan. And you had seen the charity commission laws. So again, of course, there needs to be integration. In Pakistan, if it is a social welfare department, if it is a police department, if it is a women development department, we have a legal framework, we have institutions, we have mechanisms, but hardly these institutions talk to each other, with each other at the district level, at the divisional level, at the district level, at both horizontal and vertical. So we do not have we are hyper-legislated country. I can't say that over-legislated, but we have enough legislation. What we need to do, we need to have a cooperation, coordination. We need to have a supply and demand mechanisms, which door to knock, and we have to build the institutional capacity. If police is not aware what section of law to properly invoke into the FIR, if police is not coordinating with the prosecution at the initial stage, if prosecution is not going to refer back, if judiciary is not going to sit in that way, it is always in the ordering mode, if prison is going to be the retributive and the punitive, so a whole paradigm shift in the criminal justice system towards these protection and human rights has to be developed.
Thank you, Iqbal Ditho sahab. So finally, Kausar Abbas sahab.
Well, ji, thank you very much. I think I've already spoken a lot. I think in the final comments, I would acknowledge the US Embassy, and especially gathering such a wonderful people from across Pakistan, and Catherine and Zach and Paul, especially credit goes to you. And I think this is the biggest event we ever had in Pakistan on trafficking in person issue. And you all are the ambassadors of your community, of your department, and everyone has to play his or her role to counter the trafficking in person issue. I think there's a confusion. Some people are talking about smuggling, cross-border smuggling, and some people are talking about the internal trafficking. So both issues are important, whether it is cross-border, whether it is within Pakistan, which is utilized for the commercial sex, for the prostitution, for the bonded labor, for the child soldier, for the debt bondage, for the different issues. So every one of you has to play your role, And SSDO's platform is there for you people. Whenever you need any support, whenever you need any assistance, whenever you need, you want to give us any suggestion, you can write us on our website, on our email. Finally, I would request Mushahid and Syed Saab for the concluding remarks of this session, and then we'll move to the next.
In the name of the Almighty, the Lord of all mankind, I would like to especially thank the Sustainable Social Development Organization led by Mr. Kausar Abbas. He's a dynamic young man with fire in his belly, and he's issue-oriented, and I compliment him on a very successful conference in cooperation with the American Embassy in Islamabad. Teresa, you are here representing the embassy, as well as the Pakistan-US Alumni Network, of which I'm also a member because I went to the Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, and I spent 4 great years in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I think this has been a very important conference of police, practitioners, policymakers, journalists, civil society. I think only the judges and the generals are missing. So otherwise, almost everybody's here. And of course, the distinguished parliamentarians like Shehla, Raza, who have been leaders in their own right, Senator Sir Kamran, and other members of the provincial and national assemblies who have been here. And we have heard some very good suggestions that have come in, especially about the human rights curriculum to be inserted, separate courts for children, also separate hotlines, and a dedicated unit. You mentioned about Washington, D.C. and the U.S. experience when you went there, that should be an important element on that. I would like to assure you that in the Pakistan Parliament also, we in the Senate have been focusing on issues, and I mentioned we had Senator Sir Kamran is here on the Civic Education Act. The Zaigham Act was very important. We initiated it, and also on transgender. When the issue of transgender came, I took it up in the Pakistan Senate, and then we had a committee on marginalized communities, which led to the legislation, which is landmark by any standard, especially in a Muslim country, on the rights of transgender. Just one comment with Iqbal Ditho made about civil society and space for civil society and political. I think the situation has changed now. We have multiple power centers in Pakistan today. So Pakistan is now with multiple power. In the previous past, you had only the military establishment or the political establishment. Now we have the parliament, the civil society, the media, other actives. In fact, some foreign journalists came to me last week and said, tell me who's running Pakistan, who's in charge? I said, nobody. And I think that's a good thing. Let 100 flowers bloom. So you have opportunities to take your cases forward. And I think that this is an issue like climate change, like terrorism, the issue of human trafficking. This requires coordination, not just at the national level, also at the regional level, and also at the global level. Because unfortunately, where we are located, this has become the center of gravity for this transnational crimes. And now with narco-terrorism raising its ugly head next door in Afghanistan and linking with trade routes and other routes which goes to Central Asia, from Iran also, Turkey also, and Russia also. So I think that we have to have a global response, a coordination, and we in the Parliament of Pakistan would be ready to fully support any such initiatives. So I thank you once again for your time, effort, and energy. And those of you who have come from Sindh, just a little advertisement. Next week, I'm in Sindh for the Sindh Literature Festival on 4th of March. So please come and listen to my speeches when I went as a journalist to Sindh during the days of General Zia's martial law. You'll enjoy it. Thank you so much.